You're listening to Under the Shell Podcast, the best in America.
Welcome to Under the Shell, presented by Testudo Times. I'm Brendan Weissel.
Sam Jane.
And Michael Howes. And this week we have on what I said last week was going to be our most exciting guest of the season. So let's get to it. Our next guest is a name almost every single Terp fan knows right now. He's going to be joining campus next semester, and we are just so happy to have on to finish this season of Under the Shell, quarterback Malik Washington. Malik, thank you for coming on.
Yeah, appreciate y'all for having me.
Awesome. Well, I want to start it back a few years ago. That behind the back pass you had. Do you feel like you kind of started that behind the back pass? You're the creator of it, Holmes?
Yeah, it was just something we kind of thought of. Like, we ran it in the summer, like the play. And the play was just a regular shovel pass, but messing around, having fun with it. I was like, what if I just throw it behind my back? And we ran it like all year throughout like our must-have periods. We finally got to the game, and we needed a 2-point play. And when Coach called the play, he just looked at me and started shaking his head because he knew I was going to do it. So we did it, completed it, and it was there.
So was that play drawn up as a behind-the-back pass, or was that some improv from you?
It was a little bit of improv, but like I had worked the behind-the-back all year. So it's supposed to be like just a regular shovel pass, but I just added a little twist to it.
Yeah, clearly, you guys have dominated now, Spalding. For you guys to have this type of 3-year run, how much do you feel like it cemented yourself, not only in terms of a Maryland prospect, but one of the better, high school quarterbacks to come through Maryland?
Yeah, I think my team has been a huge help to get me to where I am now. I couldn't have done it without them. The defense stepping up and making plays to, give me short fields, allowing for easy scoring drives, or special teams flipping the field, allowing us to just play freely. Because I knew that all times, like, my team had my back, and that just helped me with, confidence and trust and let me go out there and play.
Another, Baltimore powerhouse, St. Francis, one of their just committed, Zion Elee, number 2 prospect in the country. I saw you had a little FaceTime with him. He obviously was pretty psyched. Kind of what did you guys talk about on the call, and how cool is it for you to see that happen? Like, what was your reaction to kind of him, pledging to play at Maryland?
Yeah, I loved it. Like, we talked so much about, having the local talent stay home. And I think, 24 class had got it going a little bit. My class picked it up even more. And I think this 26 class is gonna elevate that even higher, with Zion coming in, and we got some other guys that are in the works. And on the FaceTime call, I really just welcomed him. Like, I let him know, like, if he ever need anything, he could reach out to me, whether it was questions about the team or, about the program, like things that I might know that he doesn't know yet. Of course, I don't know that much because I'm not there yet, but just, having, like, building that line of connection now, because we're all one family at the end of the day.
A couple months ago, he didn't list Maryland in his top 5 schools that he was going to pick from. Then on Saturday, he kind of shocks the whole recruiting landscape, picks Maryland. Was that much of a surprise to you, or were you making some phone calls behind the scenes, doing some recruiting to kind of get him on board?
No, that surprised me. The most I really talked to him was at the USC game, and then after the fact is when he named those schools off. And like, I understood, like, he hasn't been around that much, so he might not know what we have to offer as a team, but like, seeing that, like, it just kind of gave me hope that, like, like, this 26 class can be something special, just like the 25 class was. And maybe people are finally starting to listen and realize that, like, if we were to keep all of our talent home, like, how good we could be.
You kind of had a not unusual rise, but you really rocketed in the quarterback rankings after the Elite 11 camp. Prior to that, where was your recruitment at? Were you kind of always thinking Maryland, or once those other offers started to come in, did you almost have to reconsider? Because, prior to that, I don't really remember. I know Oregon and Penn State offered you eventually, but it wasn't like this, like, what you would normally see from a high 4-star, 5-star quarterback.
Yeah, my recruitment, like, early freshman year, like, going into freshman year is when Maryland had reached out, Penn State had reached out, and Virginia Tech, like, they all offered me my freshman year. And then from there, it kind of slowed down for a little bit until I had, like, a big boom sophomore year with a couple schools coming around. But before the Elite 11, like, I was coming down to making a decision. And then, after the Elite 11 is when I went to my OV on Maryland. And after my OV, I kind of knew already that I wanted to be a Terp. So that's really kind of when it boiled down for me.
What was the best story you have from an official visit? Because I feel like they've changed now, right? Before it used to be like they brought out the cars and like all these crazy photo shoots. But with NIL now, it's kind of just like, all right, like I can get that money when I get to college. What was the best story you had from a visit, or that visit in particular?
Probably when we were on the boat and we did like karaoke. I think that was actually really fun. It like let people see a different side of us players. Like we're not just football players in the day, but we're also people. We're young men. So we got out there, saying whatever, embarrassed ourselves, and had a good time.
What do you remember about the Elite 11? Were you just kind of like dialed in that whole week? Was there a certain like technical change you had made that, because I mean, I remember even like Brett Coleman, who I followed, like tweeted about you, was kind of like, hey, this kid, like he's something serious. Like, what do you remember about that camp, and how much of in a groove were you?
Really, I went in there like with one goal in mind, and it was to win. But I also had like a side goal, and it was to build as many relationships as possible. So I went in there, I spoke to everybody, asked people their names, where they're from, like how they got to be here, where they are now. Not just the quarterbacks, but the coaches working the event, the staff working the event, and I met a lot of interesting people. I met the CEO of the Dolphins. I met guys that are heads at Meta, guys that run Max Preps. Like I talked to a bunch of people out there just building relationships, and I took in every piece of information I could get. Like I have a notebook full of stuff that I had written down from from team meetings to interacting with different people, or not team meetings, from like meetings with everybody together, and then talking with different people one on one, just asking questions, because you feel like you really only get that experience one time. So I just made the best of it.
Do you like hold yourself as, I know a lot of quarterbacks, like, they like to say, like, they look at, like, how do I stack up with other guys? Like, you're always holding yourself to that kind of standard. Are you that type of player? Would you say you kind of like, hey, I want to prove that I'm the best, like, and you're kind of paying attention, or is it blinders on, not really looking at other guys?
It's kind of 50-50. Like, of course, I always feel like I'm the best player in the country at all times, because that's just the confidence that I have in myself. And I do like to see how, I stack up. So when I went out there, I wanted to see how I stacked up with some of the best quarterbacks in the country. And I realized, like, we're all really on the same level. There's like, it's not too much of a gap between, everybody that was out there. They're all great quarterbacks. So it's like now you have to find ways to be different than everybody else. And that's when I kind of hone in on myself and focus on how can I be different from everybody else, and how can I, improve my game in a different way.
Malik, this season at Spalding, just kind of looking at the numbers, you rushed the least that you ever had in high school, and then you also threw the most passes that you ever had. Um, was that sort of because you wanted to protect your body running the ball, or was that more just like you guys having more trust in your arm and wanting to attack through the air a little bit more?
I think it was a not even really so much of my body, but our running backs were having a great season. They both almost rushed for 1,000 yards each. So it's we gave them the ball when we needed it on those critical downs. I didn't have to really do anything myself. And then when I did run, it was running for scrambling for explosives. So it wasn't like I'm running the ball 5-6 times a drive. It's maybe a run here and there every 2 drives, but. And then, of course, like throwing the ball, most of our runs had, passes tagged on to them. So I was able to play freely, take my access. And, of course, coach trusts me. And because he trusts me, it allows me to go out there and play freely.
When you're in the pocket, like at what point do you decide, all right, I'm going to scramble here? Because there were some scrambles in that championship game against McDonough where it felt like anytime you would take off, you would gain yards, especially that touchdown. I believe it was in the first quarter, you broke a couple tackles into the end zone. At what point do you decide, all right, I'm going to run here?
Well, that touchdown was the design run. It was a draw. So I kind of had no choice on that one but to run. But really, I feel like it's just a feel. Like it's not even really a way to describe it, but it's like I'm dropping back, I'm looking, and maybe they played the right coverage for the play that we ran. Like it's a broken play. Like it's not going to work out. And then it's like, all right, now it's time for me to make a play with my legs and see what I can open up downfield. Or I'm going through it and I'm reading it and somebody runs the wrong route, or we mess up, or I look in the wrong place, and then it's like, all right, now we just got to be a playmaker and go make a play.
Schmidt told us that you guys run a lot of option, obviously, some RPO. What would you describe as your offense? Are you guys, more of a one read offense? Do you have multiple layers, multiple reads in a passing concept? Like, where do you kind of think Spalding's offense stacks up compared to maybe Maryland's and other programs?
Well, one, we're super high up tempo. We're super up tempo. I think that's where we get a big advantage from, is being so up tempo, because you can't really practice against tempo until you get into the game and play against it. So I think that helps us a lot. And as far as like our passing game goes, like coach puts a lot of trust on me. So I'll go through my progressions, like pre-snap, post-snap reads, confirmations, like IDing my keys, like knowing who's my movement player, and like base my reads off of that. So it depends on the play concept we have on, but it's college like. I think coach kind of bases our program and like how we run our stuff like a college. So when I talk with Coach Locks on Sundays, we went over film and things like that. it would be a lot of the same stuff, just different terminology.
Are you setting your own protection, or is that your center's job?
So I'll set it, and then he'll set it, and then I can adjust it. But we'll come up to the line, I'll call it, and then he can, if he sees something, he can squeeze it and, tell it back to stay in, or little things like that. Or if I see pressure coming from the opposite of my slide, then I can slide my line to the pressure. Little things like that. But it's not too much of my play protection wise. Just because in high school you don't see a lot of exotic, blitzes or anything like that. So it's kind of simple.
At the time of that championship game against McDonough, there were some rumors swirling around online that other schools may be sniffing around you, namely Michigan. You always said that you were going to stay true to your commitment at Maryland, and you did. But when other schools are reaching out, like, what is that process like? Are they reaching out to your coach? Are they reaching out to you and your family? And what are you saying? Just like, no, I'm staying firm on Maryland. Just what are those conversations like?
I mean, they reach out. Most time they reach out to me, just because that's probably the easiest way to get to me. Is just call me up myself. So I had previous connections with them, and they'll call me, and they'll ask me how I'm feeling about my recruitment, and has anything changed or anything like that. And I'm honest with them, completely honest. Like I feel good about my recruitment. I feel good where I'm at. Like I appreciate the call, coach. I'm never one to like burn a bridge and be like, nah, I don't want to talk to you. Like I'll always be open to a conversation, but I'm going to be honest with you and let you know how I feel. And I feel like I'm good in my recruitment. I know where I want to be at. This is my home. So thank you, coach, for the opportunity, but I'll politely decline.
When it came to, this season was obviously, not great. Like we can just be honest for Maryland football. How frustrating was it for you to watch, from the sideline? And how much of it did it factor into kind of, I guess like the decision to stay with Maryland, because you did, but and you'll have a chance now to kind of reignite the program, and B, like, what did other coaches then use that as fuel to be like, hey, like, why are you going to a school that's 4-8? You know what I mean? And stuff like that. So just take me through this season and how kind of tough it was, I guess, to watch and those,
I
questions.
mean, for me, I'm not like I never put too much expectation on anything really. So I wasn't like, oh, if we don't go, perfect undefeated season, like I'm out because I made my commitment for a reason. Through the good, the bad, thick, the thin, like I'm here. Like this is where I want to be at because I want to help build. And I've like part of the building is setting the foundation. You can't really build on something that's already done. So we had some struggles this year, and of course, coaches would talk to me after the games and stuff like that, or try to call me up. And me and coach, like he said, we hopped on Zooms every Sunday. We would hop on a Zoom and talk about it and talk about the game, and we would go through the film. And he would let me know, like, why these things are happening, like what the play is, what the defense is running, like what reads we have on this play. And it just allowed me to see, like, it wasn't like we were going out there, we were just getting flat out beat. We're kind of beating ourselves. Like, it's little play penalties, little things like that. Like, you'll turn the ball over. Like, those are things that lose you games, but those are correctable things. It's not like teams out here are just better than us, like, and they're just beating the brakes off of us. That's just not how it was. So that just helped me stay firm. I mean, I was going to be firm anyway, but that just helped reassure me.
When it comes to the commitment, I mean, what did they tell you about the NIL? Like, what's your kind of package plan, I guess, when you get to school? Do you feel good about it? Like, what do you want to see? And what is it right now? Have they told you?
We haven't really talked about it too much because that's not something I'm really, really worried about, to be honest. Like, I want to go there and play football. Like, it's going to be what it's going to be. And no check is like the league check. So that's the ultimate goal at the end of the day is that a rookie contract is different than anything you'll ever touch in college. So I never really worried about it too much. I just want to go there and play football.
Unless you're Bryce Underwood, man, and you get in the numbers people are talking about.
Yeah. That he's probably the closest right now to that league check. I know Bryce a little bit just from like being around. He's a cool dude. I'm happy for him. I hope he succeeds.
Did you playing him?
Yeah, it'll be a good game.
Obviously, reaching the NFL is like your number one goal in the end of the day. Why do you think playing for Coach Locksley and at Maryland will make you in the best position to be able to reach the league and play in the NFL at one day?
Coach has coached some of the best guys, to go in the league. The Jalen Hurts, the Tuas, Mac Jones, like those are three dudes that were in one room that all made it, to that ultimate destination, that final goal. And coach knows the game. He's been around the game for a long time as coordinator, as a head coach, as a position coach. Like, he's done it all. So I think I can just kind of trust coach because he's been around it for a minute. Like, he knows what he's talking about, and I believe everything he's telling me.
What's the best Locksley and Malik story?
It's a good one. Probably came to my basketball game. Came to a basketball game, and it was like my 1,000-point game. So we played against St. Francis, and I scored like my 1,000 point that game. And he just congratulated me after. I was just like random that he came to. I didn't even know I was near 1,000 points, but I look back on it and I realized like that's when I scored my 1,000 point was at that game.
Is he a vocal fan, or would you say he's a kind of just
He's
sitting?
pretty quiet. Yeah, he's pretty quiet up there, just watching. I've seen him up there, just paying attention to the game. He'll cheer like a little bit, clap when you get a bucket or whatever. But that's really it.
Some crazy Locksley recruiting stories on this podcast before, including one where he visited Vernon Davis when he was working at a Quiznos to pitch him to come to Maryland. Do you have any like crazy recruiting stories from Locksley where it was just him going above and beyond to get you?
I think really just consistency. Like I said, they came around freshman year, and basically every season, every off season, like as soon as they were allowed to talk to me, like coach was letting me know like, hey, what's up? How you doing? When the head coaches were allowed to come out and come to schools, like we were talking to them. And he's just been around for a long time, and that kind of played a part too because it's like he's believed in me this whole time. It's not like he just waited to see like, oh, he's doing pretty good. Like now I'm gonna try to go get him. It was early before I had any success at all, and he's just been around.
Let's talk a little bit about Free Grandma. How did that start? The now viral Maryland hashtag on Twitter.
Yeah, when I was getting close to a commitment, I think I just got back from like the Elite 11, and somebody posted an image of a grandma locked in a cage, and it was like keeping my grandma locked in this cage until Malik commits to Maryland. And after some time went on, I committed. I went back, found the tweet, quoted the tweet, and just put like hashtag Free Grandma. And then from there, it just kind of it grew its own wings and did its own thing. Now, other recruits were using it. Like we were putting it whenever somebody committed, it was Free Grandma. We became known as like the Free Grandma class. And then hopefully the 26s find their thing. If it's the same thing, that's cool with me. It just kind of took its own wings. And I probably had to explain this so many times when people were like, "Yeah, is your grandma in jail?" And I'm like, "My grandma's not in jail. Like this. It was a whole different thing, but it's pretty cool to see the light that it's kind of took on."
Did you have that tweet ready in your drafts for when you committed to Maryland?
No, it was really after the fact. It kind of popped up. Like me and one of my coaches, Coach Aaron, was talking about it, and I was like, I'm gonna go back and quote the tweet and be like, "You can let her go." And he was just like, "Nah, put something like catchy." And I was like, "All right." And I was like, "What about Grandma's free?" He was like, "Flip it." I was like, "Free Grandma." I was like, "That makes sense." He was like, "All right," and then we went from there.
Does your grandma? Have you shown any of your grandparents the Free Grandma?
I've showed her. I don't really think she understands it. Because she's not a big social media person, so I mean I've showed her, but I don't think she don't really get it.
My mom was like, because my mom is not like a huge sports fan, but she sometimes will see random stuff. She's like, I hope his grandma's okay. I'm like, nah.
Grandma's not actually jail. She's at home, living good.
For you and kind of being that almost ringleader, I guess, of kind of this 25 class. How active are you? Like, I know, like on Twitter, obviously you're publicly recruiting, but like, what goes into kind of the behind the scenes stuff? Like, are you actively DMing guys, or is it more just like letting them come to you and being like, hey, like, what do you think about here? Like, can we play together? Like, do you like how does that kind of work?
It's really a mix of both. Like, there's some guys who I have better relationships with that I know I can text and be like, yo, like, you always got a home here or something like that. Or, I see dudes, jumping in the portal and it's like, hey man, like, come on back home, like guys that are from here. And other people have texted me, like, hey, like, tell coach, holla at me, whatever. Like, I would love to come through. It's really a mix of both. I'm always going to be on it because constantly trying to improve. Like I said, if we keep these guys home, like it would just be a whole different story.
And then, this year, as you kind of get in here with the 25 class, what are your expectations for your year one?
Going there and really earn the respect of our teammates and of the program. Like as this, freshman class coming in with all this like proverbial weight on our shoulders. Like, people are kind of expecting us to do a whole bunch. I think my message to really the whole 25 class is just don't let the moment like outweigh. Like don't gas up the moment. Like it's gonna be what it is. Like gonna go out there, but at the end of the day, you're just playing football. It's just first and 10. It's just second and 4. Like don't let the moment ever get too big. So it's not really too much of an expectation on us. I think it's more just go out here, earn the respect of our team, earn the respect of our program, earn the respect of the university, and go from there.
What do you think will have to happen in order for you to start like from the jump? Like, what are you going to have to do?
Like I just said, I'm going to have to earn the respect of my teammates first. I feel like nobody wants to follow a guy that they don't have respect for. And as a quarterback, you're the leader of men. People are there, like your team's supposed to follow you, supposed to act how you act. So I think in order to do that, I have to earn the respect of my teammates, be super hard in workouts, give 100%, be in the film room all the time, and try to get as much of the offense down as I can as fast as possible, and really just go from there.
And then you're early enrolling this next semester. What kind of benefits are you trying to get from coming to campus a semester early and getting some more work in with the guys?
Yeah, just like I said, building that trust with my teammates, being able to get into the playbook early, start to learn the offense, just so that when spring ball comes around, like I'm more accustomed to it and I can move faster because I'm not thinking as much. I'm just out there playing because I know the stuff like the back of my head.
Technically, like on the field, where do you want to work on the most this offseason? Like, what are you kind of focusing on? Schmidt said he wants to see you, I guess, maybe process zone better was, from what I remember, was what he said. What are you kind of looking to work on?
Yeah, really just the mental side of the game. The physical, it's always going to improve. As you work out, as you train more, like that's going to constantly improve. But that mental side is something I feel like a lot of dudes got to work on, just because it helps slow the game down so much. And the college game is so much faster than the high school game. So any tips and tricks I can use to help slow it down or help ID things and maybe get a beat on coverages or blitzes, that will help me so much, and I can understand the game even better. It allows me to play.
What is that? Is that just watching film? Is that talking with Billy? Like, is that Locksley? Like, what goes into kind of the mental improvements that you have to make?
I think it's a combination of all of it. Like Billy's really smart. He's a really smart quarterback coach. He's been around the game forever. Film doesn't lie. So it's like a combination of the three would help me as much as possible to succeed.
And then, of course, your Spalding teammates, Jaden and Delmar, they're coming to College Park with you. Just kind of what's your excitement level at to be coming along with those guys who you've won championships with and they know you as a teammate and a leader?
Super excited. Super excited for those guys. We all reached this goal together. Couldn't have done it by ourselves. Me and Jaden, we've been in this since freshman year, really just going at it every single day, him being on the defensive side of the ball. And I just know that at the end of the day, no matter what, like I got at least two guys that got my back through whatever, because they've had my back for these past couple years. So I know going in there, like I'm gonna look out for them. They're gonna look out for me, and then I'll just build from there.
Are there any other current commits right now other than those two that you've gotten pretty close with and are excited to be on campus with?
I think most of the class, we have our little class of 25 group chat. So most of I played youth ball with Iverson, so I know Iverson forever. Same thing with Bud Combs. I played youth ball with him, known him forever. Me and Justin getting pretty close. Amir getting pretty close. Like Sid, I played against. Like we're all pretty close as a class. I would say we all talk almost every day.
You said when you got to Spalding that your ultimate goal, that's kind of who you are as a person, is to go to a program that maybe isn't as good as it was. You know what I mean? I think you said something like build up a program, leave it better than I found, and kind of leave it for the next guys. For Maryland, you're kind of, like you said, the saving grace, I guess, in a way, after a tough season, and this class particularly. Do you consider that at all? Do you accept that and embrace it? Do you not worry about it? Like, what is that type of pressure, I guess, and how do you handle it?
To be honest, I don't really pay no mind. Like people say what they want, they talk about how this is really like the make or break year and all this other stuff, but at the end of the day, we're playing a game that we all love. So I never really take myself too seriously in that aspect, and I think that helps me when I'm on the field too. That I'm not taking myself too seriously. Like I'm doing what I love, so I'm gonna be out here and give everything I have, and the result will be the result.
Yeah, I think it's a mature look to have. And then lastly, for Maryland to get to where you want to go, like how much are you gonna have to be the driving force behind it, I guess, and what do you want to get to with Maryland football? Like, is it a national championship? Is it a Big Ten championship? Like, where's a goal for you?
Really, it's me and Coach are gonna work together. We're gonna be hip and hip, working as hard as possible. And I think the goal for any program is a national championship. But I think it's gonna take time to get there. It's not gonna be we're not gonna win a national championship on August 1st. That's just not how it works. Like you're gonna have to build it up, so you can get to them later stages and start playing your best ball. But you never, like you say, never really win a game in the first quarter. Like it's gonna have to be a constant grind, like pushing through things, like finding your niches and seeing what you don't do well, so that way you can improve on it to get to that ultimate goal in the end.
Malik, we got to get what's the best jersey that Maryland football wears? Which one are you most excited to rock?
I think everybody's gonna say the white one that they wore against Oregon was
all white. Yeah,
that was beautiful with the change in color numbers. That was beautiful.
They told you they're gonna bring that back, or what's the?
I don't know. We're gonna see. I hope so. I would love to wear it.
Hey, you media trained already. I love it.
All right, Malik. Well, thank you for joining us on Under the Shell, and we look forward to seeing you on the field.
Yes, sir. Appreciate y'all.
In honor of Malik coming on the show, we wanted to do a recruiting breakdown of all the players Maryland brought in this past signing day. To do that, we're going to take the top 9 players or so and break them down. But first, let's give a quick recap of what has happened in Maryland football offseason so far. A lot of transfers out, a lot of DBs leaving. Just to some of the big names: Kevis Thomas, Perry Fisher, both leave into the transfer portal, alongside another Florida native similar to Thomas. You got Zeke Avett. He left, and Jonathan Akins as well. So Brandon Jacob as well, leaving 4-star, another kind of tough loss to take. He was probably the biggest loss, I would say, guys. Maryland's highest rated recruit last offseason. Could have played a role probably in the incoming team next year because of the departures of Dante Trader and Glenn Miller. So that's probably the toughest one. But they're going to be replenished with some players, guys, and let's talk about those guys. Freshmen's coming in. Maryland signing around a 20-player recruiting class, around 27th, between 27 and 29th in the country, depending on who you look at. And there's some good guys in this one. This is one of Locksley's better classes, I would say. And it starts with the quarterback, Mike. Break down Malik Washington's game and what he brings to the Terps for us.
I'm going to take this back to 1989 for a second. Maryland basketball just fired Bob Wade. Sanctions are ready to be rained down onto the program. Walt Williams just finished his freshman year and is receiving calls from major programs to transfer in the midst of all these sanctions that are coming. Instead, he decides to stay home with the new coach the Terps just hired in Gary Williams. They have a winning season in 2 out of the 3 years together. They beat number 10 UNC at Cole during his senior year. And the Terps reached the NCAA tournament again 2 years after he graduates. This decision to kind of stick at Maryland really propelled the program in the end, took them out of the potential misery that it could have been in. And where I'm getting at with this is I think Washington's commitment is going to have a similar impact on the football program as what Walt Williams did many years ago. I mean, if you look at the state of the football program right now, they're 4-8, just had one of their worst seasons with Locksley in recent memory, at least, especially after the Talia era. But you can see that the Malik effect is somewhat in effect already. Washington, Jalen Gilchrist, another Terp who is committed. Did he sign yet, Sam? He did sign. And Zion Elee, the 3 of those, they're all higher rated than a current member on the Terps roster. The hype is real. He's brought a new breath to this program. Obviously, it's a big if whether or not he can live up to this height, but all the traits are there. He passed for over 2,900 yards this year, had 29 passing touchdowns. Both of those marked his best in high school, only had 8 interceptions. He also had 33 carries for 167 yards, 4 touchdowns on the ground, 5.1 yards per carry. And then the big thing, he knows how to win. He has won 3 straight titles at Spalding. This year's title game was a blowout. So in my mind, watching him play in that title game, watching how his career has progressed, he has not regressed or folded under any sort of pressure this year, with obviously the biggest spotlight in any recruit in the state of Maryland, I would say right now. So I would say Washington can live up to that.
Let's talk about one of those guys who's going to be protecting Malik, Jalen Gilchrist, 4-star offensive lineman, kind of could play on the inside and outside. Locksley compared him to former Alabama offensive lineman Jonah Williams, who started from the jump and then was a first-round draft pick. So that's a guy that Locksley looked to. He's ranked as the 92nd best prospect in the country, 6th at his position, and the 2nd highest prospect in Virginia. So obviously, pretty premier player. He chose the Terps over basically a wide dearth of offers. Came down to Alabama, Penn State, Florida, but his final 3 was Maryland, Georgia, and South Carolina. So really, really stacked list. I think Gilchrist has smaller arms, which I think is kind of the reason you'll look for him to play inside maybe. But this is a guy who I think could start right away, especially with the offensive line struggles that Maryland's had. Gilchrist is a player that I think could really, really have an immediate impact. So I think that's probably one of the bigger recruits Maryland got, not to say it literally because he is a big guy, but I think that he's a huge addition, and I think he, in 247, Gabe's Brooks wrote, he's a combo offensive line prospect with the physical specs and experience to play outside, but he has a particularly high ceiling when projected to the interior. Locksley said that he has really heavy hands, which lends itself well to the run game. So I think this is a player that you could probably stick on the inside in year 1 or year 2, and then if there's a need at tackle in his later years, probably can swing him out to one of those tackle positions. But a really, really good get, and I would not be surprised to see him start from day one on the offensive line, which is pretty rare for a freshman.
Let's go offensive line. Let's switch it over to defense. Sam mentioned how Maryland has already lost so much depth to the draft and the portal on the defensive side, and getting defensive backs in is going to be important. And one of those big recruits is Messiah Delhomme from Virginia. He's the second highest ranked recruit in the state of Virginia, according to ESPN, and fifth, according to 247 Sports. The 30th ranked safety in his class, but very important for Maryland at this moment in time. Obviously, Maryland will be looking to rebuild the defensive back room through the portal, but having depth come up is going to be also important. He's enrolling early, going to be starting right away. Had offers from Ohio State and Alabama as well. So big get for Locksley. Played some wide receiver and running back in high school, but I would expect him to be important on the defensive side. I don't know if we'll see him start right away, but definitely important to start building back some of that depth, and best way to do that is in recruiting.
We're going to go back to the offense here. Someone who will be running behind that offensive line is Bud Coombs. He is a dual sport athlete. For this podcast, we're going to be focusing on football, but some around Maryland, some people that I've talked to think that his biggest impact could be at Bob Smith Stadium for the Dirty Terps. Right now, he's the #1 baseball prospect in Maryland, according to Perfect Game, and he chose Maryland because of that ability to star in both sports in College Park. When I talked to Coombs last spring, he described himself as a high-effort running back who evades tackles and blocks out of the backfield. Currently, 247 Sports has him ranked as the number 30 player in Maryland, the number 72 running back, according to their composite.
Let's take it to another high-level athlete, another high-level running back, Iverson Rocket Howard. This is going to pair up with Coombs in the backfield. Oxley compared them to Hemby and McDonald. Comparisons, I think, from a head coach is kind of hilarious because they just say the best players that they've coached at their positions no matter what. But I do think that Howard's game really compares to Roman Hemby's. Both pretty explosive guys out of the backfield, can really catch it. That's one of Howard's biggest strengths is he's a really, really dynamic receiver. Quince Orchard's coach John Kelly said in a 247 article that I don't think that people understand that you can line him up in space and do step with him. He's a really, really good receiver out of the backfield. I think that Howard can play a very limited role in year 1. Running back isn't necessarily a position I think Maryland's too worried about. Depending on what Roman Hemby decides to do, they also have Nolan Ray coming back. Maryland always plays 2 to 3 running backs, so I would expect him and Coombs to kind of compete for that third down, third running back role. But Howard's ceiling, I think, is probably a pretty solid comparison to Hemby. I think this is a kid who is a pretty, very safe prospect. I wouldn't expect him to bust. I think he can bring some elements out of the backfield as a receiver, and I really, really like his game. Out of the 2 running backs, I would prefer Howard probably, just because of the versatility he brings. But one thing he's going to have to improve, I think that Howard's known as kind of a power runner, because that's a lot of what Quince Orchard ran was power. Maryland runs a lot of zone running concepts, so figuring out how to kind of rush behind a different offensive line and an offensive line scheme will be interesting to watch.
We'll keep it with the running back room and someone who could end up being in the running back room, but not totally sure yet, and that's Samir Smith. He's from Maryland. He's the second highest player from the state to come to the University of Maryland. The big thing about him, he was a big get for Locksley. He was originally committed to Alabama, decommitted, committed to Maryland, then officially signed with Maryland just recently. Not exactly sure, like I said, if he'll end up being in the running back room. He played a lot of running back in high school, also played a lot of wide receiver, played some cornerback, played on special teams, type of guy that they call an athlete, could play all over the field. Not exactly sure how Maryland will end up using it, listed as the 5th highest ranked, kind of in that athlete position, someone who's very versatile, could play all over the field. As Sam mentioned, with all of that running back depth, not sure if we'll see him there.
Sources have said that he's going to be playing a lot of receiver to start.
All right, we're going to Justin Devaughn. He's the number 23 player in Maryland, number 104 wide receiver nationally. This is a guy he produced over 1,000 all-purpose yards last season, led his high school to the state championship. And he's not labeled as an athlete, but this guy's an athlete. He also competes in track and field. He was a state champion last year in the 110-meter hurdles, also the 300-meter hurdles, and he finished fourth at states in the high jump and seventh in the long jump.
Let's go to a defensive back that will play defensive back. Jaden Ships, 6'1", 180-pound corner out of Archbishop Spalding. Guys, he's my favorite kind of sleeper prospect. Not really ranked that high. He's the 95th cornerback across the country, according to 247, 36th best player in Maryland. But I really, really like this kid. I think he provides a ton of versatility. He played safety. He played corner. We had Kyle Schmidt talk about how this is a guy who could be ready to come in and compete year one. He's lanky. He's not got necessarily the best long speed per se, but I think that he's kind of a really nice piece for this defensive secondary, because I think that he could really kind of provide a versatility. He can play nickel, which I think is good, but I think the best overall thing you'd want is kind of keep him on the outside, let him use his length. He's got really long arms. Had really good offers: South Carolina, Tennessee, Indiana, Virginia, Maryland. This is a guy who I think is a nice prospect and a nice get for Locksley in a pretty solid defensive back class.
I'll stay with one more here on the defense. Carlton Smith from Virginia. But the big thing about him is he was one of the first people in the class to commit to Maryland, and has stayed with that through and through. Highest ranked linebacker for Maryland. He chose Maryland over Notre Dame, Bama, and Penn State. Someone I would not expect to see on the field at linebacker or really play that much in his first year at Maryland, but that's something obviously we'll have to see. And in terms of the defense going forward, this is looking way ahead. But the biggest commit Maryland got, or the biggest recruiting news, might not have been with the class of 2025. Sam, I know you were all over that. Tell us what happened.
Yeah, Zion Elee, some networks' #1 prospect, consensus top 5, top 10 guy, I think. Edge rusher out of Baltimore, attends St. Francis Academy. He is a freak in terms of his athletic ability. This guy has ridiculous bend, long arms. His pass rushing repertoire as a high school junior is absurd. Watching his tape, he's really advanced, and I think he's kind of in the light of, you look at other edge rushers. I really like comparison that his old coach had, Dallas Turner, who recently got drafted to the Vikings in the first round. Kid who just really good advanced understanding of pass rush combined with his athleticism, I think is really freaky. And I don't think that anybody really expected this. He committed on FaceTime with Locksley, Azar Abdul-Rahim, who, guys, let's just take a quick note. Rahim has been massive for this program. That was a really strong hire by Locksley. Basically, every big recruit mentions how big Abdul-Rahim was in their recruitment. So really smart hire by him. And Elee told me that, that was kind of when the momentum started to shift, was when Azar got hired. So really nice pickup by Locks. And he committed with Plank on the call as well, which I think maybe should tell you something about kind of the NIL pledge. He says he doesn't care about NIL. Everybody says that. I don't know how much I believe it, but this is the type of kid that can really maybe start to shift things if they have a bounce back year next year. If Malik is what Mike thinks he can be, you're looking at maybe a program and kind of rebounding from such a down 2024.
I know that both of you, and specifically Mike, were looking so deep into recruiting. Obviously, Mike, you were really looking at the 2025 cycle, but was this something that was on your radar at all? Is this something you looked into before the past couple of weeks?
Not at all. So he released his top 5 schools all the way back in August. He had a couple Big Ten schools in there. Maryland was not included. So this was off everybody's radar. Completely blindsided by the news. So it was a nice surprise.
I think Maryland, that's Elee told me that Maryland, it was off their radar too. They weren't really recruiting him for a long time because they thought that there was no way he would come to Maryland. But after the USC game, Elee told me that him and Locksley had a serious conversation, and he said, hey, listen, I want you guys to recruit me. You were my first offer. Maryland gave out his first offer January 31st. I think he was a freshman, handed it out. But they kind of had ignored him up until that point when he started to blow up. He's like, listen, you're not out of the running. I want you to recruit me. Locksley obviously amped up the attention. The staff started to put pressure on him, and he committed. We'll see if it holds. I think that's kind of the biggest thing, is the likelihood of him staying true is, I think, up in the air. He says he's here to stay, and I don't think we have any reason but to take him at his word, but you know that there will be other teams circling around. Programs will be, begging to get him to come to their school. So it'll be fascinating to watch over these, next coming months, and we'll be covering it. So you should go check out my profile on Zion at the Diamondback. And yeah, that was the biggest recruit I think that Maryland got, in a long time, since Malik probably. But he's in 2026. Let's get it back to 2025 and give us some of our superlatives. This is just going to talk about, we're going to kind of bounce around here and say which players we think fits this category best. First off, let's start with most important. Guys, I think we can kind of say this is a consensus. It's Malik Washington. He is basically the program's future at this point, and I hate to put it that way, but you get a quarterback like this where everything is riding on him. I think that he has to live up to the hype, or else that it's going to be tough to kind of recover from it.
You talk about most important, there's such a big impact on the field as well, but obviously we talked about it, but what he's doing off the field is also so important. Getting other players to come to Maryland is a big part of what such a big recruit can do, and Malik has obviously already had that impact, and we'll see if Zion has that impact as well. But when you talk about most important, if the best player is getting people and is a guy that people want to play with, that does wonders for a football program. I mean, you can't even speak about how important that would be if this ends up being something that works out.
Yeah, definitely. Let's bring it on to a little bit more of a tough question. Biggest sleeper that we like. Mike, I'll start with you.
I'm going to go Bud Coombs. Obviously, you have a lot of belief in Iverson Howard. You think he's going to be the lead back out of this class, but I don't think you should sleep on Bud Coombs. He plays football in one of the toughest conferences in the nation, in the WCAC. The Math actually won that title this year over Good Counsel. So he's got the experience. He's been playing against tough competition. He's obviously one of the higher rated players in his class. And he's also just a pure athlete. You see it with the dual sport connection there. So I think Bud Coombs, a lot of people are going to sleep on him because you also got Iverson in that class.
I'll go with Jaden Ships. I think that Ships is one of the lower rated players, but I love his versatility in the defensive backfield. Probably one of my favorite players they brought in. I really think he's going to play a big role. I think maybe even his freshman year, if we continue to see this kind of start transfer portal exodus from Maryland's defensive back room. So really excited to see what Ships does.
I'm also going to put an honorable mention for Delmar White, defensive lineman, also from Spalding. Just looking at that dude and the size that he has, there's no doubt he's going to be a game wrecker once he gets to go in Maryland.
Let's move on. Obviously, it's great to look down the line, but who do you think starting next season, come August, who's going to have the biggest impact day one?
I'll start with Jalen Gilchrist. I think that he's a guy who they need to be good off rip. Offensive lineman, they need somebody to step in and kind of be a solid starter from day one. And I think him at guard is going to be a pretty good mainstay for them along their offensive line. So I'll go Gilchrist.
I think you can see Messiah Delhomme plug into any role that Locksley wants him to be in. Obviously, you said earlier he's going to be playing wide receiver. You could also see him in the cornerback room. Turf's obviously pretty sparse room for them this season. If he can get going on that side of the ball too, especially with the lack of depth there, I think you could see him have an early impact.
I'll go Zymir Smith for day one impact. We talked about offense, talked about defense. Haven't talked a lot about special teams. Salmon was talking about how he might play wide receiver. Don't exactly know where he's going to end up, but having someone you can plug in, as an athlete, just go make a play on special teams. An area where Maryland has not excelled, hasn't really had somebody that is like that. Possibly someone like that trying to find a role in the team. I could see him day one and having an impact on the team in special teams to start the year off, and then as his career moves on, probably playing wide receiver.
Yeah, I love that. I think Zymir could be really, just his speed. He says he runs a 4.4. I mean, on Twitter, obviously, you never know, but would be a really, be a nice special teams guy. One guy who we didn't really talk about, who I think we did a poor job, we neglected, is going to be my answer to our next question, which is highest ceiling. I'm going to go Bryce Jenkins, defensive lineman, an interior guy, but I think this is the kid that honestly, if Malik doesn't pan out, he could be the highest draft pick from this cycle, because the NFL is always looking for the interior defensive linemen who can rush the passer. And that is what Jenkins does. Really heavy hands, really nice kind of interior pass rusher. Comes out of Friendship Collegiate Academy, which is actually the high school football program that Azar Abdul Rahim founded. So really cool kind of note there. He had a ton of offers from a lot of teams: Tennessee, South Carolina, Bama. Obviously, that's a pretty stacked list. Michigan was on there as well. So this is a guy that, across the country people wanted. And I think that his potential to rush the passer from the inside, if he can kind of fill into his body a little bit more, and kind of cut down, maybe get a little bit more, cut down on some of the weight where he can kind of play on that, 3-tech and also on the edge a little bit more. I think that this is a kid that you really look at and think could, eventually get to the point of where he could be, a high NFL draft pick. So I'm really excited to watch him play.
I think this one is pretty clear. It's Malik. I mean, he says his goal is to reach the league one day. If he pans out at Maryland, if he lives up to the rankings, if he lives up to the hype, if he lives up to everything that Terps fans have built him up to be before he even takes a snap at SACU Stadium, if he can live up to all of that, he will be an NFL player one day. He will be possibly even be a starter one day with the athletic traits that he has, being able to run with the ball, being able to do designed runs, not just scrambling, also being a gifted passer. The ceiling for him is limitless.
You're absolutely right, Mike. But at the end of the day, we're still not sure if we're going to see him as the season kicks off. And just in terms of highest ceiling for the next year, but also for 10 years down the line, I'm going to go Jalen Gilchrist. There's such a need for good offensive line talent in the NFL, and especially someone who's developed throughout a program. And his impact at Maryland could be extremely important. I can't tell you how many times we've sat down, recorded this podcast, and just said that the biggest issue with the Maryland football team last year was offensive line. If Jalen Gilchrist can be a mainstay, like Sam said, and lead this team to better rushing attacks as well as just better protection of the quarterback. There's something important to be said about that, and having a start on that is definitely someone I could see having. When we look back at this episode in 10 years, saying he was the most impactful player from this draft because of the way he's able to protect Malik, and maybe he'll stay past Malik. You never know with offensive linemen. So that's my pick.
Well, guys, that was a great way to wrap up talking about the future, but there still is football being played right now, even if Maryland's not a part of that. It's really kind of a shame to me to say, I'm going to whisper it, Michael Howes is probably going to win the pick segment unless he has a titanic drop-off here. So, Mike, give us your playoff picks. We're doing 4 playoff picks, correct? 1 bowl game and 1 pick for the national champion. So, Mike, give us your 6.
And then just a wild card pick. So 6 total picks in the national championship pick. Mike, what do you got?
Man, I was looking at the lines earlier today. I don't really feel confident in that much, especially my national champion pick, but I'll get onto that later. I'm going to go Tennessee, the Dogs, by 7.5 points. I'm going to go SMU, the Dogs, by 8.5 points. Indiana against Notre Dame. Indiana by the Dogs by 7.5 points. I'm going to take a favorite for my third pick. I'm going to take Texas, favored by 11 points. My bowl game, I've been riding with them all season long. I got to end it with them too. I'm going to take Colorado, the Buffs, by 3 points over BYU. And then, Brendan, I know you like these niche games. What do you know about Incarnate Wood from Texas?
I don't know anything about them, Mike. Please inform me.
Well, this school, they became a D1 program in 2013. They play in the championship series, FCS. They'll be going up against South Dakota State on Saturday, the 14th. The line for that game, South Dakota State, is favored by 18.5 points. I'm going to take the over on this game. I'm going to take the over 54.5. These two teams played earlier this season. They scored over 60 combined points, so I really like that number. And then for the national champion, I'm picking Oregon. A lot of hesitation there. Oregon's played in some close games. They've probably won some games they shouldn't have this season. But at the end of the day,
I would not put the Maryland game in that category.
I would not put the Maryland game in that category at all. But they're undefeated for a reason. They've been pulling out wins for a reason. And they're the 1 seed for a reason. So I don't see them losing another game.
We haven't mentioned it yet, but a big piece of the picks this week, to keep it interesting, if you pick the national champion correct, you get 3 additional wins. Mike has a big lead. He would need things to go terribly wrong, but we have to make it mathematically possible for someone else to win going into the last week. So national championship, you get 3.
Close. We're making up
What'd you say?
We're making up rules to make it close right now.
This isn't your time to talk. Let Brendan go.
Mike, Here's what I'll say. If you if you lose the picks, you did something terrible in the last week, and I'm here to watch it happen. I think I'm probably mathematically eliminated. I'm not out of second place, however. Here are my picks without further ado. Tennessee plus 7.5. Ohio State's terrible if you watch the Michigan game. I know Sam watched that game. Penn State minus 8.5. Penn State playing at home, I would take them by about 45 if I could. Notre Dame minus 7.5. Battle for Indiana. Notre Dame just a better team with more experience. Clemson plus 11. They had a big win in the ACC championship. I expect them to continue that momentum. And then I'll take Syracuse minus 6.5 against Washington State. Syracuse head coach has been pretty adamant all year about getting people to play in the bowl game, especially Kyle McCord. So if he plays, I would expect Syracuse to win by a lot. That's the rationale behind that pick. And then just because I want to have something to watch this weekend, I will pick Army minus 6.5 against Navy in that classic matchup. And then here's my national championship pick. You've heard it here first. I'm going to go with the Georgia Bulldogs. They basically only lose to Alabama. I don't see Alabama on the bracket. Maybe they should be there. Maybe they shouldn't be there. That's for another episode. I will take the Bulldogs.
Brendan, I don't know what you mean they basically only lost to Alabama. They definitely lost to Ole Miss.
In the past 4 years, they've basically only lost to Alabama.
Okay, well, we match on a lot of things in our picks this week, so I can't give you too much shit. We'll start it off with Penn State minus 8.5. Yeah, I agree with what Brendan said. I did have Clemson, but I'm a flip-flop. I'm going to take Texas plus 11.5. This is the one I kind of felt the most iffy on, so I'll ride with the Longhorns. Hook 'em, baby. And I'm going to take Notre Dame minus 7.5 against Indiana. BYU plus 3.5 over Colorado. I think Colorado's, both their superstars seem unlikely to play. Without Shador and Travis Hunter, they look like my flag football team. Finally, we're going to go Fresno State plus 3 in my favorite bowl game, the Idaho Potato Bowl. I love potatoes. Shout out Idaho. Give me Fresno State plus 3. And then I also agree with Mike. I don't feel great about any of the teams this year to win the Natty. I could see Tennessee, but their road is really hard, so I'm not going to pick them. I'm going to go with Penn State, which makes me vomit inside because I know James Franklin's never won a real big game. But Penn State has a pretty easy road, and I don't love Georgia. So give me Penn State to win the Natty, which makes...
Is a terrible pick.
I know, Brendan, but thank you. Appreciate it coming from the last place finisher for 3 straight
That's true.
years.
I really should have stayed muted. My bad.
Yeah, Brendan should have stayed muted, but he doesn't have to be muted for the end of our segment here. Brendan, wrap us up.
Season 5, it's remarkable we've made it this far. No terrific terp this episode, but I would like to just give a special shout out to all our fans who made Season 5 our most listened to season ever. A lot of that has to do with Eddie Calkins. Thank you so much, Eddie. He's doing an incredible job running social media accounts, posting clips. Everywhere you see clips, everything you see on social media, that's all Eddie. Episodes with, over 2,000 views on YouTube, that's all due to him. So we can't thank him enough. We can't thank you guys enough. And we will see you guys in the new year. Happy holidays.
Guess what? You've got Under the Shell Podcast. Nobody does it better.